Good afternoon or morning, whenever you're watching this, perhaps even evening. I'm Judge Chen. I'm a district judge for the Northern District of California here in San Francisco. And we've assembled this panel this afternoon to talk about externships, judicial externships. And so we're hoping that you, the listener or watcher, viewer, will perhaps be sparked by this program to think about and perhaps apply for a judicial externship. As you will hear from our panelists, an externship has a tremendous amount to offer to folks, and can be a very rich and rewarding experience. It's not a full clerkship. In a way, it's sort of like a mini clerkship. You get a preview of what it's like to work in chambers with a judge and with staff. But I think by the end of this program, hopefully you will be inspired and will be interested in seeking these opportunities. And there are many opportunities throughout our court, both at the district court level for magistrate judges, bankruptcy judges, district judges, as well as for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal. So we're going to talk a little bit first about what is a judicial extern and what do judicial externs do. And I'm going to first turn to the judges on our panel, Judge John Owens, who is a Ninth Circuit judge and the chair of the Opportunity and Equality Committee for the Ninth Circuit, and Judge Andre Barat, who is a district judge for the Central District of California, and I believe was formerly the U.S. attorney at one point for that district. So both of these judges come with a vast amount of experience, have extensive externship programs. I'm going to turn over to Judge Owens and Judge Barat to talk about what is a judicial extern and what do they do?
Well, look, I'll start, but Judge Barat really has quite a setup in his chambers. I think I'll say I have the more traditional externship program. Externs in my courthouse, in my chambers, generally are law students, generally after their first year, sometimes after their second year. And as Judge Chen, you said, it really is kind of like a mini clerkship. We treat our externs just like law clerks. They are there for all of the meetings where we talk about the cases. If we have any oral arguments, they often attend them. They help write memos for me, but also for the full court. Sometimes they even present cases to a panel of 3 judges, which usually only experienced attorneys get to do. So we really treat them that way. Now, to be clear, we don't expect externs to come in as fully fledged lawyers. We understand that it's only after their first year of law school or maybe their second year of law school, and that's okay. So we don't give them the hardest cases necessarily, but we do try to give them a clerkship type experience, and more importantly, a window into the justice system, a window into how the Ninth Circuit works, how our federal courts work, and then hopefully they can take that experience throughout the rest of their careers. I say that, Judge Chen, that's how I do it. I think Judge Barat's setup is a little broader than mine. Judge Barat, why don't you take it away?
Sure. I mean, look, like Judge Owens said, I mean, it is very much to see the inner workings. I jokingly say you get a chance to see how the sausage is made, right? And we give our externs, like Judge Owens, opportunities to work up cases, draft either whole memos or portions of memos, whole sections of whole orders or portions of orders. In my chambers, I also have them go over the criminal cases. I think where I've broadened my horizon, so to speak, and it's been sort of by circumstance, we now have hired college students, and I've even had high school students. And it's literally by circumstance. I was speaking at a high school and 2 kids came up to me and said, I really want to learn more. What can I do? And I said, you know what? Come on down. Now, obviously, I'm not going to expect the high school students and even the college students to know, the standards of review and know how to research cases. But I talk with them about the cases and try to explain the procedures. They learn stuff from the other externs. And particularly in the criminal context, I actually enjoy having a perspective of someone who has not been exposed to law school to see what do they think about these criminal cases, about the guidelines and people's backgrounds and the impact that it should have. So for me, selfishly, it gives me a fresh set of eyes and a prism of which, look, I'm an old man. I mean, and getting a perspective from a 16, 17, 25-year-old about a variety of issues at least makes me question, it makes me think, okay, am I thinking about the right things? Or maybe I didn't think about something that person brought to the table. And I think that applies really with all externs, whether they're in law school or high school. But I think that's one of the many benefits that I hope the externs get in chambers, is that they get to have a robust discussion about all of these issues.
And that's the thing. Thank you, Judge Brown, Judge Jones. I think that's one of the things about a federal judicial clerkship. The variety of cases that we see in the federal courts are vast, from criminal to civil, all aspects of civil. And so if you're spending, 8-10 weeks, or however long your semester is with one of the judges, I can promise you, you will see a wide variety of cases. You'll learn about all different areas of the law. But you also learn and sharpen your skills in civil procedure, because a lot of our time is spent in civil procedure, which is critical. I try to emphasize to young lawyers how important it is. If you don't know civil procedure, you're never going to get to the constitutional question or the breach of contract or tort question. You've got to know that, and you would get a healthy dose here. And I'm sure both of you would agree, one of the best things about this, besides observing all this, is it's an intense legal writing experience. You're going to get feedback. Maybe if you want to comment about how you review your externs' work and what they gain in terms of writing skills.
That's a great point. We just had some externs finish up here over the summer. We're recording this in the end of September of 2024. I just had some externs finish up in August, and they both commented how much better their writing became over the summer. Not so much because of me. I do review their writing very closely, and I offer them comments. I sit down with them and speak with them about it. But where they really benefited was working closely with the law clerks. And the law clerks, before I see the memos, the law clerks have sat down with them and gone through and really spent the time to think through these issues with them. And both externs I had said, wow, I learned so much just about writing over the summer. And to all students out there, I want to tell you, I don't know where AI is going to take us in terms of writing, but analytical writing is so important to being a lawyer. Crucial. And if you can come into an externship, and I know you don't get paid very well to be an extern, and we can talk about that, but the fact what you're going to learn in terms of writing is invaluable. And in many ways, as Judge Chen, you suggested, I think that's the biggest skill set they take away from an externship is the improvement in writing.
And Judge Chen, the only thing I would add to that is Judge Owens is spot on with respect to that, about the writing and getting the feedback. But also what I think is interesting for them is they get to see all different types of writing from the litigants. And they get to see good examples and not so good example. What's effective, what's not effective. And that is even broader, particularly when they get to see lawyers in the courtroom. And so, and sometimes I use this as sort of confidence boosters. I've literally said to some externs, you see this? I know you can do better. And these people are practicing law. So I don't want to hear you saying, I'm scared to be in federal court. I don't think I can do this. You can do this. But you get to see all kinds of work product in addition to the internal work, and you get to see what is effective, what's not effective. So I think that's important as well.
Great. Well, let's hear, instead of the hearsay approach, let's hear directly from the former externs. We have on our panel 4 former externs. Alegna Gomez, extern in 2021 for Chief Judge Stephen Johnson and Judge Elaine Hammond of the Bankruptcy Court here in the Northern District. She's currently a term law clerk for Chief Bankruptcy Judge Johnson. Claire Pratt, who I know because she worked with me. I can't believe this, 20 years ago as an extern here, went on to clerk with the Department of Justice in the Immigration Court, and is now managing attorney and principal of her own named firm, specializing in immigration law. Jacqueline Dewart is head extern for Judge Simon, who I went to baby judge school with, Northern District of Oregon District Court, and as well as for the Oregon Supreme Court, Justice Duncan, and is now a term law, and that was in 2022 and 2023, and is now a term law clerk for Magistrate Judge Armistead in Oregon. And then Jordan Lopez, extern for my good friend, Judge Leslie Kobayashi in the fall of 2012. That was quite a long time ago, and is now a career clerk. And maybe you can explain what that a career clerk is for Magistrate Judge Kenneth Mansfield. So let me ask the panel of former externs a little bit about, first of all, how did you learn about the externship opportunity, and what was the application and hiring experience like? Maybe Aligna, since you're on my left screen, first one, yeah, I'll call on you.
Yes, of course, Judge Chen. Hi, everyone. My name's Alegna, and I applied to the externship through this program called the Summer Judicial Internship Diversity Project, which is hosted by an organization called Just the Beginning. And they do a really good work and job in trying to recruit law students from all over the country and trying to place them with federal judges, state judges, just to give the law students this type of exposure. Specifically for myself, it was a great opportunity because when law students are in their current environment, they don't know whether that school has a robust judicial clerkship program or not. And so for law students that may have less resources provided by the law school, these, the Just the Beginning program is really helpful. So I just did a common application. You do need to have 3 references. You need to do a sample of your writing, and then you fill out some questions, but definitely encourage law students to look out for that program.
All right, Claire, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Happy to be back here with Judge Chen, and I'm hearkening back to 2004 when I applied. I know that my school had a pretty robust externship program, and so we knew that, Judge Chen and other district court judges, particularly the magistrates, which Judge Chen was back then, were hiring a lot of externs out of our school. But I think the most interesting part of my hiring kind of process is that I was available in the fall because I was in a program where I did my first year and then I did full-time school my first summer. So I was available full-time in the fall, which I think made it a little easier to have my resume kind of stand out from others. And also, being available full-time in the fall, I think was a benefit for the judge. And of course, a benefit for me, being able to be there every day, learning from judge and chambers.
So we should explain that depending on the chambers, I know my chambers hires 3 sets of externs every year: the fall, the spring, and the summer. Summer is usually a full-time position, but a lot of schools allow for clinical programs or credits for externs during the fall and the spring, and I think many chambers also hire. So depending on where you're going, the opportunities could be year-round. And I should also mention that Alegna referenced the Just Beginning externship program, which is nationwide. And I think if you want information on that, they have a website. I'm sure if you just Google Just the Beginning, you can get information on that. Jordan, what about your experience?
So I actually met Judge Kobayashi through our professional responsibility course. She came in and sat in on a panel. And one of her pieces of advice to the class was, if you meet someone who you think has good mentorship potential, you should invite that person to coffee and just strike up a conversation with them. And I took her up on that. So after class, I approached her, we talked a bit, and she encouraged me to apply for an externship, saying there were surprisingly not many applicants, even within the courthouse in general. So I applied for that. It was a pretty smooth process. Like Alegna said, application, cover letter, and transcript, writing samples. And it was pretty smooth from there.
Great, thank you. And Jackie?
Hey, yeah, so I externed at the Oregon Supreme Court and the Oregon District Court, and I learned through both of those just through our career services website, and sort of just applied through the process they provided, which was, so I ended up emailing my materials. But I think I also was encouraged to apply because I had met other students who had done judicial externships, and they had described it as a really valuable process and experience for them. And in terms of, I did do my externships both during the school year. So I did one in the fall and one in the spring, and both in my 3L year. And so for me, it was, really nice to be able to do those while I was in school, because they were like local to where I was going to school. And so I was just able to do that while being in school and to get that experience.
Right. Well, it's interesting. This illustrates how many different ways there are to find out and to apply, whether it's through an organization like Just the Beginning Foundation. There's also the American Bar Association has something called the Judicial Internship Opportunity Program, JIOP, which is again nationwide. And I think they provide a stipend to help students pay for rent during that period. So that's something you can look for. Your school, and then networking, informal networking, whether you can, which is always important, whether you're applying for an externship or a job or anything else, is important. And of course, websites and other students. What about now that you've done it and you look back, can you give us maybe a brief explanation of what day-to-day life is like in Chambers as an extern? And maybe we'll go backwards. We'll start with you, Jackie.
Sure. Yeah, so I think generally I would have, one big project that I was working on for several weeks at a time. And so I got to work on, draft opinions while I was externing for Judge Simon. And so I would be just, doing research and writing and meeting with his career clerk and talking with her when I had questions. So that was sort of my starting point for each day. And then I would also get lots of smaller projects from the judge or from the clerks. So maybe some small research projects, or I would cite check, opinions that other people had written. And then we did have a trial happen while I was externing, which was great because I got to be part of that process of sort of preparing for trial and preparing the materials. And then I just got to watch the trial and got to watch a lot of things that happened in the courtroom. So Judge Simon encouraged us to come watch, anything that was happening in his courtroom. And then we also went and watched things in other courtrooms in the courthouse. And so we got to see just so many different, things, parts of trials and oral arguments, sentencing hearings. And so it's really great to be able to just see all sorts of different procedures happening in court.
Right. And that's true. The milieu of the courthouse is really important, especially where Judge Barat is, where you've got how many, 28, 29 active judges and another 10 or something. You have like 40 judges in that court. You can go up and down the hall and see all sorts of different judges and approaches and the way they handle things. And you'll see an interesting variety. Jordan, what about your day-to-day experience?
So I was going to class full-time in the fall semester. So I spent about 2 half days a week in Chambers. And so during that time, I'd be working on probably one larger assignment, like a dispositive motion, a motion to dismiss, or a motion for summary judgment. Judge Kobayashi was kind enough to set the hearing for that motion on a day that I would be there, even if it wasn't, her normal hearing schedule. So I would watch oral arguments for that. I would discuss in depth my drafts for bench memos, which I would later turn into an order with the career law clerk. And then also meet with Judge Kobayashi to keep her in the loop on that. And like Jackie was saying, I also had an opportunity to watch proceedings before other judges that were timed when I was there.
Great. Claire, if you can recall 20 years ago. Well.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to the others' experience, obviously a lot of research, writing, drafting memos, and probably parts of orders back then, meeting with the judge's law clerk and other chamber staff, as well as with the judge, observing hearings, observing really interesting mediation at one point, again, going into seeing other cases that were going on in the courthouse and activities, and then other really kind of fun and interesting activities. Like I think on my first day, we got in a car with the judge and some U.S. Marshals and went to go do a naturalization ceremony where the judge was leading the proceedings. So see every piece of what goes on in the work of a district judge.
So let me emphasize, those who might be interested in working for a magistrate judge, in many courts, especially including ours, and I think in the Central District as well as others, magistrate judges handle settlement conferences. They act as mediators. And if you're fortunate enough to work with a magistrate judge, chances are you'll get a chance to observe that from the mediator's perspective, which is something I never saw in 20-something years of practice until I got here and became a mediator. And that is such an invaluable insight and experience that you just can't replicate. So that's my pitch for considering the magistrate judge externship. Jordan, you had it.
Thanks, Judge Chen. I just wanted to add, so I clerk for a magistrate judge now, but we often invite externs from who are externing with DJs to come down and observe settlement conferences with my judge. So, the opportunity is there, even if you are externing for a DJ.
Yeah, that's right. I do the same thing. Thank you. Legna, what about your experience?
Yes, I think I had a pretty unique experience in the sense that I externed during the summer, and so half of the summer I externed with one judge, with Judge Johnson, and then the other half of the summer I externed with Judge Hammond. And so it really did expose me to the reality that the law is the law, but depending on which judge you extern for, clerk for, there's just nuances, right? And it really exposed me to how different judges might think through cases differently, or might weigh certain information more heavily than others. What else? So my day-to-day changed after the half of the summer passed. And I really enjoyed that because I was able to go to oral arguments, hear hearings, and even though it was the same court, I did have a different experience. So if that's also an option and you can do one externship with one judge and then another externship with another judge, I highly recommend it because you do get a broad range of exposure.
Great. Or you can do an externship for one judge and maybe clerk for another judge.
Exactly.
Which we'll talk about in a minute. Turning back to the judges, Judge Barat and Judge Owens, how do you recruit? How do you hire externs? What do you look for when people apply?
I'll start, I guess.
Yeah, Judge Owens is muted, so you go ahead, Judge Barat.
Okay, I got quicker. I was quicker on the finger, I guess. For me, I mean, as far as hiring and recruiting, a lot of it is we have on our court webpage, we tell when we're hiring externs, so that's one vehicle. But I think Jordan and Alegna mentioned, there are a whole host of programs of which I participate in that is a feeder pool for externs, whether it's the JIOP program, Just the Beginning. I would encourage folks that to look into those programs nationally, but in many jurisdictions, and this has been a growing trend in our district, many of the local bars now have judicial externship programs. The Mexican American Bar Association, MABA, JIOP, CABA, you name it, all of the different bar associations have that. And wrong or right, I participate with all of the groups, which is one of the reasons why in the summertime we have as many as 8 to 9 externs, because of between MABA, JABA, JIOP, the Irish American Bar Association, they have a great externship program where they bring students from Ireland to participate. So that's 4 right there. And I haven't even looked at a resume. And then to Jordan's point, I've picked up clerks, externs, and even clerks, quite frankly, from folks that just reached out to me. I spoke at an event. I participated on a panel, and people that had the same initiative as Jordan came up to me and said, could we meet? We schedule a Zoom call or et cetera. And next thing you know, for example, my first high school student, she came up to me after speaking at a program, and she showed me this initiative. I was like, you know what? I've never done it before. And I was frank with her. I told her, never done it, but let's give it a shot. And that, quite frankly, opened the door for other high school students to come in and get that exposure. So I would encourage law students to cast the net widely, hustle, don't be afraid to ask questions. I often say it's kind of like, to the extent anyone's a sports person, it's like baseball. The greatest hitters in baseball, their average is in the 300s, which means 7 out of 10 times they're striking out, but they're still the best. So if you talk to 10 judges and only 1 or 2 respond, and that leads to an externship, it's worth it.
Right. Judge Owens, what's your hiring process?
So similar and but also different. I first want to echo something I think it was Jordan said. We don't get a ton of external applications. So for clerkships, the judicial clerkships, we get hundreds of applications. For externships, I often get like 10 to 15 tops. So I just want to echo that there is a real opportunity out there. And I think I'm not the only judge who has noticed that externship numbers are fewer, I guess I should say. So this is a real opportunity for you. The odds are much better in your favor to get an externship than to get a clerkship. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this process. I generally talk to law schools and professors and just let them know, hey, I want externs. Please send me students you think that are great along the way. That's generally how I tend to do it. Some schools will independently reach out and they'll send a form and I always fill it out. I wanted to comment about timing. Often people say, when should I apply? So there are different types of externs. There are the academic externships that occur during the school year. And then there is the summer externship. The summer one, in for many ways, is the easiest one to do logistically for all parties involved. I tend to look for summer externs in the January, February timeframe. That's generally when I do it. Do not wait till April or May to apply for a June externship. Judges, we need time. There are things we have to figure out there. We have to figure out where we're going to put you physically in the courthouse. So just make sure you give us enough time to do it. So I think January, February is a good time. The other thing I would say about this, about externships, one thing I talked about, there's all this legal research and writing, and that's true, and that's great. But also you are in a federal courthouse. I'm in the district court here in San Diego. Even though I'm on the Ninth Circuit, my chambers are in the district court. And you go and see court proceedings in every level of the courthouse. And you get to meet law clerks from every different level of our judicial system. So I think one of the biggest benefits to an externship is not just the legal research and writing, but it's being in that environment, that courthouse environment, which is so hard to replicate. And for those of you who go on to private practice, you're going to see spending times in courthouses is really hard to do when you're a working lawyer. But when you're an extern, you have full range of the whole courthouse.
That's great. What advice would you give to externs in terms of what to put in their application and having a sense of what you all are looking for? How important are grades, for instance, versus work experience or other types of things?
Well, I would say this, first, grades. Look, you're not going to have a ton of grades on your transcript. If you're applying for a first year, if you're a first year law student and you're applying for that summer, I just said apply in January and February. Well, hopefully you have some grades. So you do need to have some grades in my book if you're going to be a law student extern. I need to see something. Do your grades need to be perfect? No, they do not. Again, the criteria for clerkships post law school graduation and externships for me are very, very, very different. So grades are not nearly as important. So what does matter? Work experience does matter in this respect. It doesn't mean you have to have worked at a fancy job. I had an extern who worked at Subway sandwiches, but why was that important? Because I could speak to someone where he worked, and this young man is now clerking on the district court here in San Diego. I wanted to speak to someone to see what kind of coworker was he. And the analogy I always use is that if someone spilled something at Subway behind the counter, was he the kind of employee that would help clean up the mess, or would he laugh at the person that spilled it? That's what I want to know. And to me, that's why the work experience was important. Not because I needed to know they were going to be the next great legal mind, but just how are they in chambers? Because one thing you have to remember about judicial chambers is that it's very small. It's like one of those mini submarines where we're all stuck together, right? And the analogy I always use, if you work at a major international law firm, yeah, I could send you to the Frankfurt office if you weren't performing well. We can't do that in chambers. So the one thing I'm really looking for in externs is, are they a good coworker? I don't expect them to know everything. Frankly, I don't expect them to really know anything. But I do expect them to be a respectful coworker who will work with the team to get the job accomplished. And if that's the attitude they have, that is what I'm looking for. And that's what I ask their employers. How were they as a coworker? So in that respect, Judge Chen, work experience is important because it provides the data points I can see to extrapolate how are they going to be in chambers.
Judge Barat?
Are they going to be a good coworker? Are they going to be a sponge for knowledge? I mean, to Judge Owens's point, you got to remember, just practically speaking, chambers in our court and district court, judge, 3 law clerks, and a courtroom deputy. That's 5 people, okay? Even when I have my, what we jokingly in chambers call summer camp in our summers, we have max 10 to 12 people, maybe 15, maybe 14 when you add eight on top of that. It's a small group. So you're going to see who wants to work, who doesn't want to work quickly. So you inquire as to their work experience to see, were they a good coworker? Were they the kind of person that worked well with others, willing to engage, ask questions, be a sponge for knowledge? Those things are vitally important. Like Judge Owens, the grades are not as nearly important for judicial extern as they are for a term or a law clerk position. I view this, wrong or right, as want to give some kids an opportunity to see how the sausage is made, get a writing sample, and hopefully get them enthused and exposed to and focused to see what they want to do in the future.
I agree with everything that you two have said. I think the thirst for knowledge or sponge for knowledge is really important, as well as getting along with everybody. But those who display real interest in the job and the position in the courts, those are the ones that sort of attract me. If you're just looking for something to do, then this is not the place. And you get a lot more out of it if the more you care and are enthused about the position. So turning back to the former externs, tell us what you enjoyed most about your externship, and what skills do you feel that you developed that you perhaps would not have developed in another position? And this time, we'll start with Claire.
Yeah, as the I think one person on the panel with the private practice experience, I can say, definitely the externship got me ready for my clerkship at the immigration court, and then definitely private practice. Doing writing as an advocate, or even as a law clerk, is just so different from the writing you're doing in law school. So the practical experience itself was very, very helpful. Also learning how to manage a caseload, getting through your assignments in a timely manner. Also just incredible working with everyone in chambers, not just the judge and the law clerk. You can learn so much from the other people there in chambers, including your fellow externs.
Great.
I'll leave it there.
I'm sort of curious in your experience, since you became an advocate pretty quickly, how much of the judicial writing experience enhanced your ability to write as an advocate, as a litigator?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do a lot of litigation, but I certainly do a lot of persuasive writing. And it's definitely helpful. I mean, you're not kind of writing it as objectively, obviously, looking at both sides. But yeah, it certainly helps being concise, and knowing where to drill down on particular arguments.
Great. Alegna, any comments?
Yeah, I think just echoing what Claire said, I will emphasize one of my favorite parts of the externship was just building relationships. So I externed summer of 2021, which was prime COVID time. A lot of it was virtual. And so I really appreciated that many of the law clerks in the district court, the magistrate court law clerks, the bankruptcy court law clerks really put really good programs during the summer, virtual programs. And so we would have little coffee chat times, or even if we couldn't see each other physically, there was a lot of intention to still have those moments to build community. And it can range from talking about, hey, I'm kind of stuck in this issue. Can you review my memo? Or can you look at something? Am I thinking through this correctly? And even moving forward, you hear about other opportunities that then you're an extern, but you're talking to a law clerk, and then they let you know, oh, there's this other opportunity at this other court. And so just kind of sharing so much knowledge with each other and opportunities is a great way of building community. And in terms of skills that I gained, I would like to just pitch just the beginning, because writing is so important. And one of the key features of that program is that before you start your summer externship, they require you to do a writing, have a writing assignment. So it is pretty time consuming because you do the writing assignment during April and you're assigned with a writing mentor that will review your writing sample, and they kind of just help mold you and get you ready for the externship experience. And then you just continue developing your writing skill. I think as attorneys, writing is our art. And so just having that in the back of your head all the time is important, that every opportunity you have to develop that, you should take it. So I will say just like writing and research, like completely changed during my externship as well.
Great. Now, let me emphasize, since you worked at our court, and maybe Judge Broad's court, Judge Owens' court does something similar. You know, we have programs. We used to have, and we still do, sort of brown bag lunch programs that are put on so that all the externs and the clerks are invited to hear from the U.S. attorney or from somebody in some field of practice or from the public defender's office about, you know, what they do and you know, sort of other things. We've also have, you know, show films about the Korematsu case or about other things that people can learn and digest. So there's a milieu of opportunities besides going up and down the hall watching other courtrooms and judges. There are actual programs that I think most courthouses offer for externs. So that's another great point.
Yeah.
Jordan, what about you? What stood out in terms of what was most enjoyable and helpful?
I think definitely the practical application of the federal rules of civil procedure. You know, it's much different when someone is teaching them to you in school versus going out into the real world and seeing how the rules come into play and all the discretionary calls that judges need to make when you're working on different cases. So I thought, and I always tell people this, that an externship is really the safest place to start learning how those rules are applied in the real world, because you've got the law clerk, the career law clerk looking over your shoulder, checking your work, the judge is doing the same. But once you get into private practice, or if you take on a clerkship yourself, you are thrust into this world where you really need to just go for it as far as the rules go. So I thought that was really beneficial.
Great, good. And Jackie?
Yeah, I think I would echo what some of the others said about, I think my favorite part definitely just stemmed from being part of a tight-knit chambers. And it's just like such a small environment, but such a supportive group of people and who really are invested in you learning, which was, you know, unique for the jobs I'd had during law school. I felt like my judicial externships, you know, the people I was working with really wanted me to learn and like were really taking the time to help me learn. And they were also just really supportive. You know, I was externing at the time I was applying for judicial clerkships, and, you know, they were really supportive about giving me advice, helping me prepare. And so I think just getting to be part of that tight-knit group and just getting to talk through all sorts of, you know, legal and non-legal issues with just these really smart people was really amazing. And in terms of skills, I also think my writing was, you know, just something that benefited so much from judicial externships. And I think just getting that chance to start from scratch on something that seemed really complicated to me, and then doing a draft and getting this really detailed feedback from clerks and from a judge, and then just getting to keep doing that, and just really helped me learn about how to take something that, you know, seemed super complicated to me at the start and learn how to make it seem simple, and really learning to avoid, you know, overcomplicating things and keeping things concise. So I feel like my writing definitely benefited hugely.
Hey, Jackie mentioned, I guess, sort of a networking advantage or opportunity when you're there, whether it's with the judge or other clerks that you're working with or other externs. I'm just curious, can any of you speak to the value of that network? Has that, you know, the people you met, how has that enhanced or facilitated your ability to go on to the next stage of your career? Anybody want to volunteer on that? Yeah, I like that.
Yes, so I externed my 2L summer, so I knew that I was looking for a clerkship as a post law school. And so I was just very open to asking for help and just putting myself out there and telling the judges, telling Judge Johnson, telling Judge Hammond, I'm really interested in getting a clerkship after law school. And coincidentally, the law clerk for Judge Johnson was going to be leaving the following year. And so because I was able to give them my work product and they knew my work ethic and all of that, it really did give me a competitive edge, I think. And so I think it's also just being open and asking for help and making those connections, right? So my externship led to my clerkship.
Mm.
And I think some of us don't think of how fluid that transition can be as well.
All right. Anybody else? Yeah, Jordan.
I kind of had a similar experience. So I externed in the fall of my 3L year. And then in the spring, Judge Kobayashi's chambers contacted me saying they had an unexpected 6-month term to fill because their career clerk was leaving for another clerkship. And so she invited me to come back for that short 6-month stint. And so I got to have a full-fledged clerkship experience during that time. I went into private practice for a few years and then found out about another clerkship with my current judge, applied for that. And I'm absolutely sure that my clerkship and externship experience helped me gain a bit of an edge in that application process. And I'm still with that judge today.
Great. Great. Yeah, Claire.
Yeah, I would add, definitely, I think, working for Judge Chen was helpful in getting my clerkship. I'm sure that he provided a reference for me. And then also I will add that Judge Chen's chambers, and maybe some of the others do, they actually have an extern alumni email list, and they send out job opportunities that they hear about to all of us former externs, which I have not been able to take advantage of, but I do send along to other folks. So it's a super helpful network to be in and kind of stay in touch with. And then also some of the externs that I met during my time externing there, I'm still in touch with today, and we refer cases to each other. So that can be super helpful.
That's great. Well, the importance of networking can't be underscored whether you're in an externship or in a job or wherever you are, because it often pays back. And being in the courthouse is one of those. Well, let me ask the flip side of this, and that is to the judges. Looking forward to law clerks. Some externs may be interested in maybe doing a full law clerk experience like Jordan had. When you hire law clerks, do you place much value on externship experiences? And have you found that those with an externship experience tend to have a running start when they come to your chambers as a law clerk?
Yeah, so I have hired law clerks who externs previously. I want to be clear that it's certainly not a prerequisite that you do an externship before a clerkship, but I have, and I think there is an advantage. I mean, they've worked in a judicial chambers before. Judicial chambers are unlike other places. It's like if you were going to work in a restaurant, the fact that you had some restaurant experience probably makes you more ready to work in that restaurant than someone that has not. So I do think that it helps. I do think it helps set the tone, understanding how everyone works together to accomplish the goal. I will say I've had a number of externs go on to clerkships, and I think it's helped them as well. So I definitely see value add to the externship, to the clerkship. But here's the other thing. If you decide you don't want a clerk, that's fine too. And the nice thing about an externship is it does give you kind of that sneak preview of what it's like. So if maybe you decide you don't want to be a law clerk, well, at least you've got the externship. But generally speaking, I think it's a good thing. And I think it does make it easier to get hired, because then I can contact that judge and say, hey, how was that person in chambers? Was she good? Tell me what's going on. And I can have that conversation. So yes, overall, I think it definitely helps.
Judge Barat?
Yeah, no, I agree. To the last point, not only can I call that judge, contact him or her. Sometimes my career clerks may have a connection with a career clerk in the chamber and say, hey, give me the skinny, because they know, okay, more than likely the career clerk is doing a lot of the intimate work with them. I think a lot of folks that have come from my chambers through reputation or otherwise, they know I'm pretty close with all the externs here. And so getting that sort of direct scoop, if you will, as it relates to their background, I think can be helpful. But to Judge Owens's point, it's certainly not a prerequisite. It's not like I hire exclusively folks that have extern, but just an extra data point by which we can get more information about an applicant.
Well, I concur in all that. I think I've had a lot of externs go on to do clerkships, and I've had two go on to be judges. One of them is my colleague, Lisa Cisneros, who's a magistrate judge now. Started off as an externship and then did a clerkship with Judge Wilkin, and now we were very pleased to hire her on as a magistrate judge. So sky's the limit, right? What would you, asking the judges, what would you want the law schools to know about externships so they can better advise their students? Is there something that you think we can do in terms of getting the word out, that the law schools can do better? Because it sounds like there are a variety of ways that people find out about it. Any thoughts?
I mean, look, I don't know if they can do any more. I mean, at least the local law schools here are pretty good about trying to funnel and getting students exposed to these opportunities. Most of the local law schools have panel discussions where judges like myself and magistrate judges, bankruptcy judges go and say, hey, this is an opportunity that you should consider. I mean, maybe I'm now getting into a pie in the sky. What I do wish is if there'd be more funding opportunities to help some of these externs, because we can't pay, right? I mean, we don't have the ability to do that. And I worry sometimes whether students shy away from the opportunity because they simply can't afford to work for free for the summer. And there are some programs that do provide. I think the JIAP program does. I think Just the Beginning, I think, does a partial, but I just wish, again, this is more pie in the sky, if there were more opportunities to provide some sort of subsidy at a larger scale, because I think I never knew anything about externships when I was in law school, and I'm not here to say that I would ever have gotten hired, but having seen and developed the relationships that I have had with the externs, I think it's a very unique opportunity that I wish every law student, if they're interested in it, should take advantage of. Because, like I said earlier, you see how the sausage is made. You get exposure to all kinds of cases. You get writing, the opportunity to write and research. I think it's magical, quite frankly. And the relationship that you can develop with your judge, I think, is huge. I mean, as an aside, I'm sorry, but I think this is important. I just was at a dinner event last week for a judge in our district, a senior judge, Terry J. Hatter, that many of you know, okay? Appointed by President Carter. He's 91 years old. And they talked about the fact that in his career, he has over 400 law clerks and externs. And that room was packed with law clerks and externs that were, benefited from his wisdom, mentorship, and tutelage. And he's a dear friend of mine. I consider him a mentor, even though I didn't extern for him. But he said, I consider them all my family. And that kind of relationship, it's hard to get. And like I said, so I say all that to say that I wish more externs had that opportunity. And I worry that the funding part can limit some folks.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. I think all of us consider our former staff, whether you're an extern, whether you're a law clerk, as family. And so you do sort of gain admission to this special group, we call it a family, that I agree with Judge Barat that you just can't get anywhere else. And as large as Judge Hatter's family is, it's still small compared to, if you're at a giant firm or with the, Justice Department, where there's probably hundreds and hundreds of people. This is a pretty small family, and I think it does afford that opportunity. Let me ask a question to everyone as we sort of begin to close out the program. What advice would you give to prospective extern applicants? So maybe I'll start with the former externs themselves. You've described some things about how you found out about it and how you apply, but if you had some advice to give to people who are considering it, what would it be? Maybe we'll go back in the order we started with. Elegna, do you want to?
Sure. So I would definitely say don't underestimate your skills. And if you don't try it out or go for it, then you're just never going to know. Similar to what Judge Barot said, 7 out of 10, if you're a baseball player, you need to strike out 7 times to get it, at least 3. And I think that's one of the hardest or biggest barriers. Sometimes we kind of strike ourselves out. So don't strike yourself out. Apply and go for it, and I'm sure you'll find something.
Great. Good advice. Claire?
I would say definitely take advantage of the full opportunity offered in chambers. Show up every day, work hard, do all the extracurriculars, go to that naturalization oath ceremony, observe that hearing, and get to know everyone in chambers as well as your fellow externs, and you'll have a great experience. That'll be really rewarding.
Great. And stay in touch with folks.
Yes.
I think that's the one mistake that people make. They leave and they have a tremendous opportunity to stay in touch with people, and they don't necessarily take advantage of it. Jordan?
Just kind of echoing what Alegna said, I would fully recommend people just apply. Don't underestimate yourself. Don't write yourself off just because you're not at the top of the class. If you don't get the federal externship you were hoping for, apply for state externships. And if you create a great relationship with that judge, maybe they will recommend you, and you can apply again for a federal externship if that's your goal.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, we've been focusing on federal clerkships because that's who we are and that's who's sponsoring this particular panel. But there are other externship possibilities. I know just across the street at the Court of Appeals for the state and the state Superior Court, there are opportunities for students to work really at the ground level and doing much of the same work that we do here. So I would second that. Jackie?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of when you're applying and once you're, in the externship position, just talking to others. I spoke to people at my law school who had externed before, and, that helped me not feel intimidated by applying, and, they were encouraging of me. And so I think that has been really helpful for me. And then while externing, talking to clerks, talking to my fellow externs, and just asking everyone for their tips and advice. And that has just helped me to not be intimidated as much by the process, both for the externship and for clerkship applications.
I know some schools, I don't know if they still do, keep kind of a file on judges and externship opportunities and maybe get comments back from former externs. And if you have that available, that's always valuable to look at. I think something similar for clerkships probably exists out there. I think that's very good advice. So let the judges close with any either advice or final thoughts. We'll start with Judge Barada and we'll end at the top with Judge Owens.
I mean, look, we've talked about a lot of things today, but I hope that that the folks that are listening or watching just remember, don't sell yourself short. Swing for the fences. There are a lot of opportunities. You've heard today from judges at different levels about all the opportunities that exist. District court, court of appeals, a bankruptcy, magistrate judges, state level. Cast the net widely. Don't prevent yourself from applying. What's the worst that can happen? They tell you no. You're not even wasting a stamp these days. It's more electronic. So you spent 20 minutes, sending an email. They say no, so what? And to the extent you can, consider even going outside of your local jurisdiction. I've had externs from the Midwest, from back east, from down south. If the opportunity presents itself and you can swing it, particularly during the summertime, take advantage of it. Because again, I think there's so much to be gained, and there's so much that can help you in your career going forward. I just think it's worth something. If that's something that you're interested in, go full force, and an opportunity will present itself.
Great. And Judge Owens, before you close with your final remarks as chair of our committee, one thing we haven't talked about is the cover letter. I don't know how important that is, but what advice would you give to somebody applying for an externship, what they might include in a cover letter?
Sure. I mean, there are different thoughts on cover letters. There's people who like the long cover letter. There's people who like the short cover letter. I would say this: in your cover letter, particularize it to that judge. So I'm in San Diego. If there's some reason why you have a connection to San Diego, or you want to be in San Diego, or something about San Diego, or I was an AUSA for a long time, federal prosecutor. If you link it to me, maybe it's an ego thing, or you link it to San Diego or something, that helps. If it's the standard I'm a student at this law school. I'm a rising 2L, and I have here are my letters of rec, and that's all you say, that's it's not going to hurt you, but it's not going to help you. So put something in that letter that ties you to why do you want to be here in San Diego? What is it about it? Are you from Southern California? Do you have family in Southern California? Or whatever it is. Anything you can personalize the letter so I actually realize you thought about me when you sent it. I appreciate that'll help you for sure.
Great. And any general final thoughts or advice?
Here's what I would say when I think about like what's the most valuable thing I have in terms of material goods, it's not my house, it's not my pension. Honestly, it's the network of people and my law clerks. That is the most valuable thing I have. And if you are an extern, you have access to that. So Judge Barat is right. We can't pay you in this job. And that makes it tough. And I know these things are really hard when you're young. You're like, I need this money. I got to pay for this. I got to pay for that. I get that. But if there's any way you can make an externship work purely on financial terms, long-term, you are better off for it, for sure. Because it expands your world. You heard from the people on the call today, our externs. It changed their lives. It changed their lives. And so if you can make it work for that 8 to 10 week period, do it. Just go for it. Like Judge Barat said, it's not that hard to apply and it could change your legal career. So I see no downsides to doing it, but you got to apply.
Great. Well, that's great advice. And the financial thing is a real one. And that's why I think JIOP from the ABA program and Just Beginning and some of the bar associations, I know the National Asian Bar Association has just also started an externship program. So there are various programs. I think if you do your research out there, you'll find that there are hopefully ways to find a subsidy if you do it during the summer. Of course, if you do it during the spring or fall, then it's just for credit, then there's not a financial cost of that. So for those chambers that do non-summer hirings, you might consider that as well. So I want to thank all the panelists. I think you've gotten a view from both sides of the aisle, so to speak, or both sides of the bench. But the common unifying theme is that this is a valuable, enriching experience that we all, I think, highly recommend. Unfortunately, there's not just one source you can go to like Oscar for a clerkship. There are various sources. You have to be a little bit creative, but through either your school, through networks, through websites like the Just Beginning Foundation and others. And of course, the court website and sometimes the judge's own site within the website, you will see that the opportunities are there, but you have to seek those out. So on behalf of this panel, let me thank you, the viewing audience, and hopefully we've been able to deliver what we were hoping to do, and that is to spur your interest in applying for an externship. So we'll see you in court.